a little bit more, I was going to say again how in the great city parades comes by and there's a star in the parade, and I guess like warm-up acts, little cheap marching bands, and then whoever it is in the big convertible, the mayor's mistress or somebody. And it's like the climax. But in the city, the stars of the parade really have not much effect on a more subversive kind of progression, because the closest you could say to a star would be the guys coming along the cleanup, the sanitation department, to clean up all the elephant and horse and star due in the road. Or to say at the city level, when it seems to be a climax to a revolutionist, would be foreplay. Glad I cleared that up. I was going to say we're going to continue a little bit on the basis, if you recall, like my tale, I was going to bounce off that same tale of our illustrious 15 billion people, if indeed that's the population of the earth, and if it's not, don't write me. And the 15 billion people giving their individual views and opinions of reality, and then that being the constructive, unavoidable, total reality, or as they like to say in some cities, real reality. That's right, be sure and write that down, real reality. To take it a little bit further, I was going to ask, would you then be able to see that if you individually could play out the part, if you individually could think all the 15 billion, that is, all the possible thoughts that could be thought about whatever the subject at hand is, you would then have, in the same sense, what could only be liberally, honestly referred to then as a total grasp of the reality of whatever it was that you were considering. Whatever idea, notion, feeling, opinion, attitude, experience, that if indeed you could look upon it in the same way that I went through all that last time we were taping, that let everybody, let everybody, the 15 billion people, you say, well, we're going to say something about reality. And then you recall all the things that ordinary people would come up with, all the way from philosophers to just ordinary soreheads, to say, well, I'm not going to listen to any story about reality, because all you're going to do is come up with some kind of notion that you have based upon a vested interest. You're out to sell something, an idea, some sort of food processor, set of books, and then I'm just refreshing your memory, and then if I said, no, don't blame me for being cynical, but here it is, take your best shot. Tell me why you do not like immediately what you think I'm going to say about reality. And we take what they're going to say, and I include it. I say, sir, that is included. Madam, whatever you say, whatever they say, it would be literally an unavoidable situation then, that after I ask everyone, are you through? Give them more than one shot if they need it. And all 15 billion people give their opinion about what's going to happen, what I'm going to say, what reality is, what it's not, what should not be included. Whatever you do not include in reality people's ideas of charity, people's idea of God. All right, got it. But by the same token, there'll be many other people that say, now you're not going to talk about reality in some sort of humanistic or atheistic sense. You've got to include God. Got you down. In that same sense, if you see that we took in toto, not tanto, the collective wisdom of humanity, sometimes known as opinions, ideas, attitudes, and we took all 15 billion and put them all together, you understand, none of the 15 billion then who would pass for being sane can complain. Oh, I know they will. Somebody's going to say, wait a minute, you put more weight over there on that person's thing, because she looks a lot better than me. But give me a break. The point is, within certain reasonably flying limits, no one could then complain. But now look at it. Assuming that you follow that, it's not all that tricky, and it is valid. It's not just a myth. What if you individually did that? And of course, you do not have to do 15 billion, and I'm not going to shave it down to the point of creating a New Orleans ice cone Because some things you're not interested in. Some things you'll never be interested in. Some things you don't even have enough information to be interested in if you thought, well, I'll try to be interested in just as a challenge. You just don't have enough time. But whatever it is, it strikes you of being some interest. I mean, that's not anybody's business. For the sake of this discussion, you're just interested in it. What if then, when I say interested enough that you, what do they call it? Think about it. That's it. That you think about it. But rather than just think about it, which you know what that is, right? Tell me you do. That is that you over and over and over. But what if now, instead of over and over and over, and over and over and over, of course, always has a downside. The merry-go-round does go backwards also. So whatever it is you're thinking about, it's not when I say the same thing. Surely some of you have already noticed this. Tell me you did. It's not that you just think the same thing over and over and over. It's you think the same thing over and over and over, interspersed with thinking, I shouldn't think that. So you have this sort of polarized, on and off thinking. But now rather than that, and whatever the area is, whatever the subject is, what if you then, and we're just going to take it at just real fast, just you're going to roll back real quick and like hit and run, because there's no way to profitably keep chopping this up, rather than whatever it is you normally think, which is normally going to be on and off, or yes, no, then to you, what if you could think within a reasonable, and you'd have to know, way that you polled yourself and you thought, you individually, everything, you offered every possible opinion you could think of to the point that you were just exhausted. And that's why I say we can't keep doing, well, how far should I do that? You know, people that ask questions like that belong in a cult. People that ask questions like that loudly should start a cult. It's nobody's business. Nobody knows it'd be the same way as, back to my tale, of me asking 15 billion people, all of humanity, I'm going to say something about all of reality. And of course there's a stirring. Everybody, oh no, not that crap again. And I say, wait a minute, not just my reality, we're talking about the reality. And they say, what the hell does that mean? And I say, you tell me what that means. And so we let all 15 billion tell me what it means. Adding their parts, subtracting their parts, and I finally say, all right, is everybody through? Whatever, and finally everybody goes, all right, on with it. And that same way is to yourself. There is no way to prove how. There's no way to say, well, how do I know if I thought about it enough? You got to be beyond just the operational weighty ability of ordinary thought. But that you would, in a sense, try and poll the complete population of your neural planet. That is, that you would think every possible thing that seems pertinent to you. It doesn't mean that you thought everything in the world. That's not even the question. It's to the point that you would think, well, am I satisfied? It'd be like me asking the 15 billion people, all right, are there any more comments? Anybody want to add anything else before I talk about the reality? And finally, just everybody's tired of it. Now, let's forget about me. They're even tired of it. All right, on with it. In that same way, is you thinking to yourself, is there anything else to say? If you have thought everything pertinent to you, if you have thought all 15 billion attitudes, what would that do to what you were thinking about? Well, I was going to suggest that it would give you, to turn the phrase, since we can quote myself without us having to pay copyrights, it would give you something like a total grasp of the reality of that situation, of that subject, of that area, of that question within the 3D limits. Now that I said suggest, I won't be rhetorical. If you know how to do this, then whatever it was you're thinking about, that's the last time you'll think about it. Would anybody like that? I guess there could be a smart ass around here. You look like one that might say, well, if I'm listening to what you're saying, and I was kind of trying to do it in my brain or thinking about how to be, in a sense, if you tried to do that, it just kind of, you just finally think, hell with it. I didn't say that, you said that. But how about problems? Well, I keep thinking that perhaps I have fears that one day I might suddenly leap out of my seat and put fruit on my head and begin to swish around like Carmen Miranda and even try to sing or something. And you keep thinking, no, I couldn't. Yes, I could. No, I couldn't. Maybe I should go do it. Maybe I should go back to school. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should try and be more friendly to people. Whatever it is. What if, instead of the on and off, should I have vanilla? Should I have chocolate? What if, you could poll yourself, and you took every possible opinion, the 15 billion from you, which of course it wouldn't amount to that. All of you should know that, because you get past chocolate and vanilla. You offer the population 3 flavors, and already, you might have just opened up your ice cream stand. Did I say philosophy stand is what I meant to say, right? You open up your ice cream stand, and the world lines up. Oh, all right, a lot of people line up. And they're all waiting, and you holler, all right, we're about to open, and we have chocolate and vanilla, and they're all going, and you say, and strawberry. And you look out, and whatever number you had, if you had 10 billion, as soon as you say strawberry, you're losing 3 or 4, they're just gone. God forbid, unless you're just intent on giving your brother who specializes in bankruptcy law some business, God forbid that you holler, all right, glad to see you here, we're about to open, we have chocolate, vanilla, and they're all going, everybody's, half of them going chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And then a third of them wander off. But God forbid you went, we got chocolate and vanilla and strawberry and spataccio and Rocky Road. You're just about down to you and your brother-in-law then. So, I didn't lose you, did I? That could be somebody saying, well, wait a minute, if I did that with me thinking about something, and it does not have to be ice cream, it can be something that is heart-wrenching. Something that has been a serious, weighty matter in your life. But notice, all serious and weighty matters are always of a polarized nature. That's one way, although the ordinary intelligence does not do it, but that's one way that they recognize a weighty and serious matter. Well, like, is there a God? There's not 3 answers to that. Anybody in the city knows that. There is no strawberry in there. There's either chocolate or vanilla. Or is man decent? Or is he just I don't want to say it, but is he what I sometimes think he is? Or is there life after death? Is chocolate or vanilla? There is no third answer. So look how, from a revolutionist sense, how easy it is to undertake this polling. Because you never do it. The intellect is not made that way. All the weighty questions, the ones that plague man's soul and make them wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes fearful that they might read some Camus or something. The dark night of literature, the soul. I just had a fearful thought. What if, regardless of my joke, that Milton is alive and he came back in the 30s in France and changed his name? Now many undergraduate students are having to suffer for, the weighty matters always only have 2 possible answers. I could stop there because obviously none of you had really thought about it that way. If anything even appears to have other answers, it is to the individual. If some individuals say, well, this whole idea about everything being polarized and chocolate or vanilla, that's not true because I can think of circumstances in my own life, things I thought about just recently, that I can tell you truthfully, I could consider other possibilities. And if I ask what they were, they're going to be on the scale of weightiness, probably off the scale at the bottom. Like, whether you are actually in favor of argyle socks coming back as opposed to silk or plain cotton, and it turns out that 90% of the time you do not wear socks. It's that sort of thing. It would only be in that area that an ordinary person would say, if they tried to respond to this, would say, well, at times I can conceive of, without any great effort, more than 1 and 2 possibilities. But it would never be anything of individual importance to that person. Never, never. Did you say never? Yes. So thus, what I was trying to show you was what a small, teensy step it is, neurally, for someone to try and do this kind of collective opinion gathering. To try and think all 15 billion people's thoughts for you about one subject. Because it's not 15 billion. What I'm insinuating, you get past 3. And you've already got your neural system at least running on jet fuel. Because you're already far beyond even the most weighty questions. But what if you took those? Or, on the scale of any sort of importance that you might consider. And you attempted to think every possible thought until you were worn out with it. Now, he's the one that said, well, you're just talking about, you might keep doing that until you're just worn out and you didn't give a damn about the question. Again, I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with that. I just wouldn't have put it that way. There's nothing wrong with a shill. Do I have to stop there for any moment? Does everybody follow that? What if that was true? What if you told somebody years ago, in a slightly different way, I used one pointing out, some people brought up a subject about those that believe that they're involved in mystical activities and et cetera, and I pointed out that by and large, that if you took people that believed they were talking to spirits or God and et cetera, and if they would listen to me, and I said, I can show you something different, but tricked them in some way, and made them whatever amount of exercise they're getting, if I made them increase it substantially, it would have a substantial detrimental effect, even to the point, if they took it far enough, of they would no longer talk to the gods. If they got a little exercise, 10 minutes every other day, and I said, well, do something for me. And I tricked them, I said, take up long distance running, or run at least 2 miles every day. And you could have a man, talking to gods, spirits, all full time, full-blown mystic. Within several weeks, the voices are gone. And the man would stop. What in the hell does that prove, though? And of course, would such a man, if this kind of scenario ever did happen, would he learn anything from it? No. Well, he'd learn not to fool around with people like me. He'd probably think, boy, that's probably the work of the devil or some kind of evil spirits. He was trying to get me away from my great endeavors, my great work here in life. Do you see any comparison that this person could say, wait a minute, trying to entertain every possible idea, trying to think every possible idea, every possible view of some problem I had or some idea I had, and for you to say that you would then end up with some kind of extraordinary, more manifold grasp, or a total grasp of reality, and you even said it wouldn't be a problem, you wouldn't even think about it anymore. If I'm hearing you, say I'm still talking for this guy, if I'm hearing you, what you're saying is you might sit there and take some serious problem. Now, we got serious problems here in the city. Okay. You might take some serious problem like the estrangement between my mother and myself, or my worry about my sexual daydreams. Something. And you're saying that if I tried to take every attitude, every possible view, instead of just thinking, yes, no, or ooh, what if somebody knew, or should I do that? No, I shouldn't. And you're saying if I took more views, and I forced myself to take views that I must tell you, to start with, I consider to be irrelevant. Because this is serious business, whether I should forgive my mother for what she did to me. Now, I don't know why you're encouraging me to say, well, find some other view. What other view is it? I'm going to tell you what she did. Now, you tell me what should I do. No, don't put it on me. I'm talking to you. Well, there is no other view. It's something like that. It's very close to do or die, life or death. There is no middle ground. And I'm still talking for this other person. And they're saying, but if I'm hearing what you say, and you're saying, well, force yourself in some way to take up other views. All right, for instance, what if somebody I don't know? What if and some stranger, and probably he's some kind of hard-ass guy, some guy that's not very cultured. And what if I told him about this estrangement between my mother and myself, and I said, I'm trying to collect more views, or I'm trying to be able to look at it from a different way, because to me it's either I forgive her or I don't. And let me tell you the story, so I need some other view, and I can't come up with one. And you're saying I might try to take somebody else's view like this guy, a dentist or a bricklayer or a body and fender man, an accordion repairman, somebody like that. And I tell them the story and say, what do you think? And they think, Jesus, give yourself a break. Who cares what your mother thinks? How old are you, kid? 45? Forget it. All right, if that's the kind of attitude, that's no attitude. I'm still talking for the guy. Now, are you trying to tell me that I should take that attitude, or at least throw it in the hopper, and then even find more? Now, if that's what you're saying, and I did do that, I foresee the possibility. Of course, an ordinary person couldn't do this. I'm doing it for them. They could say, well, if I really pursued that, it might get to the point to be like our mystic, out there running 10 miles a day, and suddenly his whole job's blown. The spirits do not talk to him. It's like God abandoned him. I feel a lot better, except for the fact I may have to get a job. God's not talking to me. Of course, and he wouldn't see anything in connection, and this same kind of person I'm talking for would not see it, and could never say this, but I'm saying it for them. They could say, well, now if I tried that, it wouldn't accomplish anything. But what I hear you saying, if I tried that, it might just wearing me out to where I wouldn't give a damn. I'd like, the whole thing about my mother and whether she mistreated me and I should forgive her, if I kept on trying to find attitudes, which I'm telling you in the beginning would be impertinent, because there's only two possibilities. So for me to try that, if I really did that, I might end up just to where the problem, I don't know. And they couldn't do this, but surely you guys hear me, that they could say, it might get me to the point that I just sort of get disgusted with it, or just tired of fooling with it. Hey, I wouldn't want to be responsible for that kind of, no, sir. You flash that disclaimer on the screen. I'm not here to take away anybody's suffering. No. I'm not here to take away somebody's choices. But it sounds like you're trying to give more choices. Oh, ha-ha. Who said that? Same thing as taking away a choice to somebody who only has two choices, though. When an ordinary man's intellect can only choose chocolate and vanilla, and you say, wait a minute, there's chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And they say, well, no, I don't fool with that because in fact, I don't even know what strawberry is, or if they do, I don't like it. But they say, I don't even know what it is, so I'm going to choose between chocolate and vanilla. And if I could say, no, you can't do that. Now, you got to listen. I could say, now, you can choose eventually chocolate or vanilla, but you can't start off saying that you're only going to select from chocolate and vanilla. I'm telling you, this store serves chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. That's the menu. The guy say, well, there's no way I'm going to choose strawberry. That's okay. But you got to confront it. No, I don't, because I'm not going to choose it. Maybe he already knows it's going to be chocolate, or maybe he knows it's going to be vanilla. Or maybe he does not know. Maybe he switches sometime. But he knows this. It sure as hell is not going to be strawberry. And if I said, you have got to consider it. Do you understand that by giving an additional choice that would be unnatural, I have taken away this choice because the man would have to leave. The intellect could not deal with, if you said, no, wait, you cannot separate the mountain and the metaphor. They're not two separate things. You cannot say that an A note is separate from a D note. Well, yeah, they are separate. Yeah, I know that. But you cannot separate the notes from the background. Red is not the same as violet. But you cannot separate them. Well, sure you can, because here it is. Right over here in that barrel, I want a cone of violet. And right next to it, you could dip me out a cone of red. And they're two separate things. But you cannot separate the colors from the spectrum. You cannot separate the notes from the audio spectrum. They do not exist apart from the background. If you force somebody, which you can't do, but if I could force the guy standing in line, and he knows, and of course I know, if I can make this up, I damn well know it, that he can only deal with chocolate and vanilla. And if I insist, I'm not trying to make him take strawberry, but I simply point out, sir, you have stepped right off the edge. It's kind of 4.5 dimensions, or 4.2. And you walked into a strange place, and he said, oh, how wonderful. There are 3 ice creams, and you have got to select from the 3. And I know already that he can't, or I know already if he could, that he's going to take either chocolate or vanilla. He cannot choose strawberry. If that could be forced, it would have taken away all choice, because then he cannot choose any of them. That was why some of you laughed. I thought I'd let you know why you laughed 2 or 3 minutes ago, because on that basis, it does not happen. But if you could stick your grungy little hand down into the 3 dimensions of ordinary world and do such as this, if you could actually give more choices to an ordinary person, you would have taken away their choice. In other words, what you would have done would have short-circuited like an AC line. You would have short-circuited polarized energy. You would have frozen it. People would become immobile. But back to you. Can you see that if you could perceive, if you could accept, if you could file away, if you could entertain all possible to you pertinent views, just to the point that you got sick of it, to the point that you thought, is there anything else I could think? Do I want to think anything else? You thought, no. You would have then, I'll change it instead of saying a grasp of a greater or manifold reality, I'll put it this way, you'll have a grasp of a different reality. Would you settle for that? And this guy, I still got to speak for him one more time, he still is suspecting It may be a grasp of a different reality, but I still got this sneaking suspicion if I did that, whatever the problem was, the interest I had, which most of my interests are in problems, I got a feeling that something bad would happen to that problem. Bad. You don't mean like a broken leg. No. You don't mean like it might get worse. No. You probably don't know exactly what you mean, do you? No, but I know it'd be bad. And of course, it'd be right. That's why the mystic would go, I got to quit running. I don't know, it's getting too cold. My knees are beginning to hurt. Now, I got to stop this. I'm not plugged in where I was. The guides are not talking to me. I'm not having visions. Lost weight, sure do feel better. But screw that. I'm not going to give up visions. A man's going to accept happiness on the basis that, you mean me just take happiness when I could be fighting about it? There's another specific that we were talking about I was going to point out. Not only would you have taken it along any line you'd like to prove proper for the moment, that you would have a different sense of reality, and I don't mean some great metaphysical of everything, but at least about that problem. And it could be very mundane, very personal, relationship between you and family, and etc. You will have a different grasp, and I would still say a more manifold grasp, but your conception of what the reality of what the mountain was is no longer what it was. If you could take in the collective opinions of your world population. But moreover, what we were talking about, I was going to push a little further, no longer could you take the subject in any way and use it as a metaphor. That is, for one thing to represent something else, you broke my heart is a metaphor because the girl didn't actually, we'll assume, that she didn't actually put that sucker out and try and break that bloody organ. And so you broke my heart, you say one thing to represent something else. And everyone, even those who play accordion and work on teeth, think in metaphors. Even those, as we already covered that, people who do not even know the word metaphor, deal in metaphor every day. But think, if I had the collective, the 15 billion, and I made everybody chime in when I said, they saw my hands get ready for the gesture, and they knew the son of a bitch is going to say something about reality. And they all began to complain. I said, all right, put it on us. We got all the time in the world. Everybody put in your piece of why you don't like what you know I'm going to say about reality, what you want included, what's always left out, what's usually left out that you want included. Do it all. And they do it all. Do you understand then? If that happened, and I finally turned to all the 15 billion and said, is everyone satisfied? Everyone has been your opinion, your view, your complaint, it's all been registered. And they all go, all right. And I force them. I tickle their little feet. And I say, all right, now when I am about to go all of reality, when I do that now, nobody can complain. Do you understand? Maybe one guy says, I'm not sure. And I say, all right, go ahead, we'll stop again. So he says, I'm not sure. And I say, well, is that it? He says, yeah, I'm just not sure. Okay. Anybody else? And they say, no. Or nobody answers. So I say, all right, do you understand now? We are going to, when we talk about reality, or when I say it now, I'm the guy talking. But now since, it's you 15 billion, I might as well be a damn hand puppet to you guys. You all say that you are satisfied. Down to the guy that said he wasn't sure. The last little voice. Dang. Then now when I say reality, no one can question it because you had your input. You follow me? So if they go, they wouldn't like it, and this couldn't happen and all that. But if they followed that and they'd go, all right. Amongst other things, do you then understand that metaphor would then be impossible on planet Earth? Because if you have taken reality, if now the mountain itself, a thing, and I'm going to talk about reality with my hand gestures, or the mountain is going to represent the 15 billion opinions, or we draw a circle. And now that's reality. Not because I said so, not because he said so, not because a religion said so. All of humanity, every possible input to what reality would be has been put in. They were given every opportunity. And everybody says, all right, that's it. So let's draw this circle up there. We can do it on the easel and say, all right, that's reality. Not my reality, not theirs. It's got to be our collective reality. And they all go, yeah. Metaphor is no longer possible because there's nothing outside the circle for this to represent. Metaphor is, there's nothing out there because we have taken every possible thing that humans can think. There is no longer anything to represent something else because there is no longer anymore anything else's out there. For someone to say, that bitch broke my heart. And even the bricklayers staying around there, the other bricklayers, or AC repairmen, they all know. Nobody's going to say, you mean that woman punched you out or tried to cut you? Everybody knows, broke my heart, the words represent something quite real. It represents that the man's been hurt in love. Can I have him to a bricklayer? Well, he's been hurt in love. That's what it represents. The words do not mean that somebody reached into his chest cavity and broke his little blood pump. But everybody knows what it means. That's why I say people speak in metaphors continually. And not just that. People speak in metaphors every time they say, I'll tell you the kind of guy I am. They're speaking in metaphor. But how about if I took the collective input of the 15 billion and we came up with this reality, this circle that we could draw over here, and that's reality, not mine, not anybody's, everybody's. You can't weasel out anymore. Even your complaint. You complain, I'm not sure where this is going. When it came your time to speak up, you can say, I'm not sure where this is going, but I can tell you beforehand, I don't like it. Of course, you might be the guy that no matter where things apparently are going, you never like them. That's all right. Got it. Anything else? Anybody? Was that all you had to say? Yeah, but I just want to be sure. Are you sure you heard me? I heard you. That you don't like it. No matter where it goes, you don't like it. That's right. It's all there in the circle. We draw the circle. A metaphor. Men thinking about themselves. The mind thinking about itself. Is always a representation because we established that. You knew that. The mountain is not the same thing as the word the mountain. The mountain is not the same thing as what you think of as the mountain. Your mother is something, and she is not the same thing that you think of when you say mother. Everybody knows that. There's some reports that even Aristotle knew that. After you see what he did to the world of botany and zoology. At any rate, don't any of his descendants write me. You then have a circle that is some kind of reality. It's no longer even the word reality because it has absorbed that, but we got to talk about it. Do you understand then? Metaphor is not possible because one thing, a description, words, ideas, when they're used metaphorically, represent something else, which also, the real basis of it, but it doesn't sound quite that exotic, is what we already covered, is all talk is metaphoric. All talk. Because whatever the hell that is different from the word gem clip. I mean, that's just a fact. So all talk is metaphorical, no matter how crude it is, no matter how mundane. But if we had this collective 15 billion pieces, minimum, input from everybody, and this was reality, a circle drawn there on the easel, there is no way then that anyone could talk metaphorically, because what is there left to be represented by something else? There is no more anything else. Even if anybody said, I don't agree with that. Okay, it's in the circle. We got that included, sir. You are not left out. I guess to some would-be city philosophers, this would sound as though if this was a fact, would be bad news. It would be some sort of setback. That not just now the collective of me doing this fictitious thing to 15 billion people, but if one person could start doing that to themselves in such a way that they could not think metaphorically. They could not think that one thing represented something else. They could not try to deal Of course, nobody does this directly, but it works out this way. Or it could be described this way psychologically, as witnessed by the fact that I'm about to friggin' do it. That people deal with thinking about problems in a way that they will not think about them directly, and they think about them metaphorically, even if they've never heard the word metaphorical. But what if now, instead of the 15 billion people, that is the planet Earth, I point out, could no longer be metaphorical at all? Because everything that they could think, do I have to draw a circle? It's easier for me just to point to it, that the circle is now reality. Not because I drew the circle, I got 15 billion people to tell me how to draw the circle, and they all put in their opinion, their anti-opinion, their agreement, their disagreement, their criticism, their approval, and we found up with a circle, let's say. And it's all in there. So there can be no more metaphor. But now if you did it, or if somebody hearing this heard what it seemed to be, they would see it as being some kind of setback, because in truth, at the ordinary level, thinking metaphorically, purposely, when people say they do, not people that do not know it, but people who really believe, poets, thinkers, philosophers, many ordinary people, they correctly perceive metaphorical thought to be the forefront, a higher level of thought. Correctly so, at city level. So they would hear this, if they were following into this, they would hear this as being a come down, a setback, that someone has rolled my neural odometer back. That'd be an improvement, wouldn't it? Somebody rolled it forward. Three-dimensional metaphors get real sticky, especially when you're thinking in 5D and bringing it down to 3D. At any rate, anyway, somebody's been fooling around with my odometer. That's for you people listening in Alabama. Because I never can understand that some of the people call it odometer, but they don't call it speedometer. I could be wrong. Well, do you hear, the point was that from many ordinary views, if someone, you or I, could in some way fool around with the ordinary world and make this occur, or even threaten to make it occur, then many reasonable, intelligent, to say the least, people in the city would hear this as being, if that could be done, we shouldn't do that, because man progresses, not just spiritually, not just poetically, not just religiously, but even technologically. The sciences move, in a sense, metaphorically, which they do. Many scientists have tried to describe the eureka, that I was thinking about one thing, and I was looking at my little kid play with blocks, and suddenly I realized Planck's constant, and I learned it there in the floor. So metaphorical thought, in the true sense of the word, in the greatest sense of the word, is a very beneficial commodity in city thought. And so if somebody heard what I'm describing now, they would say, well, wait a minute, if that could happen, at first it kind of sounded interesting, but if that did happen, you would have in some way taken the yeast out of everybody's bread. You would have leveled everything off. I could have made it worse. Taking the brittle out of everybody's peanut brittle. That's a no cooking erotic joke. Or at least a confectionary's erotic joke. I didn't know candy makers had a sense of humor. They would say this sounds as though if this could occur, this would be anti-beneficial. But now wait, what if we had someone coveting the ability to be able to think and to speak plainly and directly? Not many people, and it's not the norm, and it's not what life needs. But if you ever heard us talk about it around here and it struck you in some way that, yes, that would be nice. Not out in public telling people, what do you think of my dress? It looks terrible. Not that. That happens in the city already. It's known as marriage. Don't married people write me. It's the kind of things we've been talking about, to be able to think directly, as represented by the apparent tale of a metaphorical progression that we were doing last time, with the guy that says, once, when I was a child, when I was young, I looked on a mountain and I saw a mountain. Then after much struggle, I saw a mountain as metaphor. And now, in the autumn of my years, I see a mountain again as a mountain. If you can hear beyond all that, if you could bypass and short circuit all that, because that never takes a man anywhere. It's only ordinary people go through that and talk about it, which is nothing wrong with it in the city. But if you could think plainly, all of that took a man 60 years, you could do like in 60 seconds. The idea that now the mountain represents exactly what it is to me. It's no longer a metaphor, and it's no longer just a childish pile of rocks. It is now my perception. When I say that the mountain to me is now a mountain again, my perception is now the total collective wisdom of my years, my experience, my thought, my reflection. That doesn't sound at all like me taking the 15 billion people's polling. That's a different thing. But now my wisdom is such that it's almost as though I can see the mountain anew, that I do not look at through the clouds and the mist of metaphor or untoward, unprofitable bewilderment. The mountain is what it is. That doesn't sound at all what plain, direct thought might be. No, it couldn't. If anything, they're just the opposite. Because in the city, to get somewhere, to ever be insightful, to ever be religious, to ever be spiritual, to ever be truly civilized, to in any way be out of the ordinary, to pull oneself out of the neural gutter or the middle class, one has got to be able to think metaphorically. One does not simply look around and you won't get anywhere walking through life with someone, a mountain, part of humanity, and you walk past Chartres or Notre Dame and part of life. The person with you stops and they look at it. And they go, my God, what can you say about this? And you go, I'd say it's a building. It's a bunch of rocks some people put up together, I guess. The city person would have to go, and I considered you a cultured soul spirit, a kindred spirit. And you walk in, let's go inside, and you go inside and you say, what can you say about this? Maybe you say, well, I bet it costs I bet it took somebody the cleaners. No. As always, you people have forced us pushing it to a certain extreme to make the point that although that would not be the purpose, literally, any more than it would be that kind of crude idea of, well, if you thought plainly when somebody said, my opinion is so-and-so, what do you think? And you'd say, I think your opinion sucks. I think you're a dumbass. It's not that. That's not the point. But do you understand, do you get a glimpse that there is something else as represented? Here's the tricky part. The idea of metaphor is actually a metaphor for something else. It's where we left off last time, me trying to get you to push it, that life itself is a metaphor for something. That is, three-dimensional existence, quite truthfully, can be said to be, although it makes your brain hurt if you can get that far out of town, just close to the horizon. Well, let's say four-dimensional to include it all. Four-dimensional reality right here is a metaphor for five-dimensional reality. So it's no matter what can be said at the city level, and it would be quite proper for people to take a beautiful cathedral, for people to take the whole institution of religion, the institution of family. People take anything in life, a football game, to take it metaphorically. And people will look off, write books, spend time, and begin to see the NFL as a metaphor for the struggle between good and evil. Well, especially when the NFL, when they started the AFL, and then you could see there was American football and the national, and when they finally merged, you might see that as truly a kind of promised metaphor that someday when good and evil will come together, or when Christians and Jews and bank robbers and bank presidents will come together. That metaphor at that level, without any question, is an admirable endeavor. But do you see that what they're describing without knowing it, the end result of metaphor that they take as being the great thing, is no more than where you would start thinking in a subversive way. That the end result, the end of their parade, are them saying, the climax of ordinary intellectual thought to a subversive is just barely taking your britches off. It's just barely starting foreplay. And they call it, I'm ready for a cigarette or a nap. And a subversive, he thinks, well, I just got here. I'm just barely getting horny, and they say it's over with. What the ordinary mind sees as metaphor, the ultimate metaphor, don't let me lose you. The ultimate metaphor, like back to this story, was that it went from being something crude, childish, very mundane thought, very limited insight, such as, well, when I was a kid, I saw a mountain as a mountain. Or I saw a church. When I was a little kid, my family took me to a huge cathedral up in New York, and they said, what do you think of this? I thought, what the hell they want from me? It's a building, Ma. Oh, son, a building. And they point at the Empire State, and they said, that's a building. That's a commercial building. This is, I don't know, I guess you're too young to understand that this building represents something else. When I started, I saw a building as a building. But then the kid grew up, and then I saw a building. Maybe the Empire State Building, who knows? But at least I began to see churches and temples as metaphors. Not just buildings, not just buildings with a cross or a Mogan David or a... Don't any of you vineyards owners write me. That I then began to see the buildings, not as a building, but as a metaphor for the institutions that are in there, for the hopes and the aspirations of the people. Not the building, not just the church, not the structure. So I saw it as a metaphor. But then, the best shot they can take at city limits is that I even got past that. That there is something beyond metaphor. That metaphor would be surely the springboard. It would be a signpost to show that a man is on the right path. But if he lived long enough, if his insight became deep enough, he would someday get to the point that he did not look upon a church or a building or a mountain or an institution or another person as just a metaphor, because there's something else. The something else, we're running out again, is historically been writ and thought about over and over and over and over and over in all kinds of ways, that in some mystical way that it should be possible. People dream that it's possible that things, in some way, all the way from, since we picked on him, I'll give him credit, all the way from Aristotle to, Eckhart, and up until today, people having this idea that in some way things should be able, or can, speak for themselves. That some way, all of life, even a little flower pot, much less a flower, but maybe the flower pot, maybe even a building, but especially natural things. That in some way that there should be this possibility. And many of the writers and thinkers throughout history have treated it more than a possibility. They just treat it as a certainty. That in some way things can speak. They can offer their own signature. They can tell you what they are. That they can speak directly to the proper man. Now, it's always remained a dream that's never realized. But as I said, in many circles and there are many parts, even if you had never heard it, there are many people's nervous system, if they heard it, their nervous system go, yeah. I don't know what it means, I can't prove it, but yeah. That in some way a mountain, things, not just man-made as opposed to just natural, but things in life, whatever might catch your attention, that if you were trying to be a real thinker, if you're the sort of person that was tempted to drag your feet through metaphorics, that there's this idea that things in some way can actually communicate to man, to where we do not have to limit ourselves to the distorting gaze through the fog of one's own words and thought, that you could look upon the family unit, you could look upon sex, you could look upon things, you could look upon processes, you could look upon family, you could look upon life, and that in some way the things can talk. They have something to say, and people can't seem to hear it directly. Hence metaphor, etc. All right, what if all that possibility is always that there is some validity? But as always, notice it has remained a dream. It is not realized. What if it is possible? But it would be possible if you could see from a position wherein you saw that there is a seamless spectrum, a continuum, not separating things from what people say they are, which is what the life has driven or allowed these mystics and philosophers to try and describe it as. They say, the classic I'm just wrapping up for most of Western civilization at least, that they say that things have something to say, that there is some kind of great cosmic, if not spiritual, divine reality behind all things, and that they could speak for themselves. That if man could hear it in a certain way, that we would not have to go through metaphor, we wouldn't have to go through religious parables, and we wouldn't even have to talk, perhaps, because the things would say whatever it was. They would reveal their true, essential nature directly to man, and yet nobody can do it. But notice, it is still the separation, that is, even these classical, me using it as a collective, made-up description of one philosopher somewhere, that the things should be able to speak to man, that they're just sure they can, as opposed to what man thinks they should say, as opposed to a man thinking, well, that's a gem clip, and I know a whole lot about manufacturing, I know something about mining and engineering, I even happen to know something about the history of the gem clip, and yet that gem clip is not just my perception, as deep or as shallow as it may be, as varied as it may be. The word gem clip, my perception of it, is in some way not the same as that thing itself, and that thing itself, anything is minute, is that, still has something to say. It has its own reality, if I could just hear it. But notice, even at that, and that is about the best shot that philosophy has been able to take, that life will allow, it is still making a distinction, saying this thing has something to say, as opposed to what I think it has to say, or what I'm saying about it. What if I was offering the possibility that there is possible, that there is reality to that, but the reason it does not happen is because they still distinguish, even while saying that the distinction between the two has got to be overcome. As long as you're dealing on the basis that, wait a minute, I've got to overcome this distinction, you do not see that there is no distinction. And one of the 15 billion said, wait a minute, you're going to talk about reality, but I know one thing, you weren't going to say so-and-so, were you? I bet you weren't, because I'm the only person who ever thought of that. Maybe, but now it's in there. But wait a minute. This thing cannot just talk for itself, because right now, if it can, I can't hear it because my mind is too caught up with my own opinions about it. That sounds real good. How about take all the opinions you got and include any more you can come up with? I don't see what good that'll do. Yeah, I knew that. What if it is a change of position, not as the classical religious philosophers have had it about, which was the Western origins of believing that things speak for themselves, that in some way God, the great cosmic forces, made everything, made a tree, if you don't like a gem clip, made a tree, and the tree actually has a message. The tree has an essential ingredient to itself, a divine spark, as much, perhaps, or at least in varying degree, as humans do. And the tree actually has a message, and my mind is so clouded. I'm in the paper business, for one thing. And I can't really look upon a tree with intellectual, clean hands. I have a vested interest. But I just know that tree has something, it could teach me some kind of, metaphorical message if I didn't have so much baggage already that I think about the tree. Do you understand that sounds great? But it is still on the basis, the polarized basis, that there is a difference. And they would wrestle us to the ground and say, well, you're an idiot. You're disturbing the actual basic equilibrium of philosophy to say that there is a continuum, that there is no distinction between what I'm saying, that there is a distinction not only there, it should be overcome, is what they're saying. And I'm saying, whew, how much more confused can you get in 3 minutes? They're saying there's this distinction going on, and they're just sure if it's not spurious, it is ill-founded, it is ungodly, it is unenlightened, and in some way it must be overcome. That is the difference between the mountain and the mountain as the metaphor, or is life itself and my perception of life. And if I was going to play the silly game, I'd say, all right, but the thing is, why you cannot see it directly is because you cannot see that there is no difference. You cannot separate what you think about it from what it is. And I'm going to go back and play their part. And they say, well, yeah, I can. You're not listening, because what I'm talking about is I want to do away with that. I want to get rid of me, of my thoughts about the thing. I'm still doing their part to me. Do you understand? I believe that a tree, a bird, a sunset has a message, except I look at a sunset and I'm a pilot. And I look at the sunset and I start looking for weather clues because I got to fly out perhaps. Or I look at trees because I'm in the paper business. What I need to do is get rid of that so that I could hear the message. And I say, no. You don't understand. Whoever the hell you are, you're a pilot who's in the forestry business. It doesn't matter. But the connection between you and a tree, your perception of a tree, and what a tree might really be, your perception of a sunset, and what a sunset might actually be, they're not separate. Back to him. Yes, they are. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to overcome, because I'm not sure that separation is valid. All right, try this. I'm not sure it's invalid. It's back to, not many of you seem to really respond to it, but maybe it'll help now to jump back. Do you understand, take the color spectrum or the music scale? You don't have to have any talent in it, but you do understand, just playing on a piano, you match one note here and one note there. And let's say that you're just constructively tone deaf. But if we separate them enough, you go, yeah, I can tell it's a different note. You can say it's a different note, but do you understand you cannot subtract that note? There's no way to extract that note from the audio spectrum. It's just in there. It's just a point in there. And the note here is a point over here in a sound wave. And the note over here that is different. Yeah, different. It is on that same wave, but it's over here. Now you can say it's two different things, but do you understand? Now you, in essence, which is what drives the ordinary intellect, you can separate, because they already are to your mind. You can separate the note A here from the note D. You can say, yeah, they're separate. But you understand that's chocolate and vanilla. And what the intellect can't do is for me to throw in strawberry and say, wait a minute, they are not separate. Yeah, they are separate. No, they're not. Because you have got to take the audio spectrum. You've got to take strawberry into account. Well, I'm not going to order strawberry. You may not, but you've got to take it into account. No, I'm not. Because I'm not going to order it. I don't even see the point of it. The point of it is the background. It is where the mountain, and the mountain is the metaphor. What do you want me to tell you? Head-on collision? They disappear. It is that dreamed of place where people think, they just sure, many parts of humanity, that things themselves have some kind of message. Ooh, if I could just hear it. Of course, some of you might have already been through it, but you're aware, at least you think it's limited to faraway mystics in Germany or Greece. During the 60s, when hallucinogenic drugs were more popular, it was not just visual. Many people, not just believing they heard somebody playing a sitar in the other room and thought, my God, Ravi Shankar has moved into my apartment. It's like in your head as you begin to hear things. Well, even some good pot when you're more of a virgin with such things. I've seen people go, do you hear something? And find out the first time some guy really got high, he began to hear his liver percolate. And people go, and of course, and once you get over it, you realize, well, wait a minute, that was just not only my perception, it was my skewed perception because of foreign substances in my body. That's right, yeah. They shipped them in from a faraway closet. As if your own brain didn't put out enough chemicals to make some of you, which I guess you could look at as being a benefit, that some of you no longer have to waste your money on drugs. You just realize you cannot separate. We're out of tape, but chocolate and vanilla are two different flavors. Red and purple are two different colors. An A and a C in the Western scale are two different notes. But they are not separate, and this is not a game. It's not a verbal game. They are separate at the ordinary level, and it's foolish to say otherwise. They are just absolutely separate. They're two different things. But when you bring in the necessary third element, if you're going to understand anything, that is, the colors do not exist. Red, purple, any of them do not exist without that area of the electromagnetic spectrum that affects the human retina in such a way that you see it as a color. Everybody knows that. Without that, there is no red, there is no purple. Okay, so even if they're separate, you don't have them without that. Oh, all right. But what in the hell does that have to do with it? What it has to do with is what I'm suggesting, and it has to be taken, I guess, metaphorically. The dream that things could talk to you is not somewhere else. It would be closer, to use the same kind of descriptions that are available that people have already thought about. is available not in some way, well, I'm going to wrestle down or get free from my cloudy, my imprecise perception of the thing, of the mountain, of love, of friendship. That's staying in the way because the thing has something to tell me. If I could wrestle down my part, that's like saying vanilla would be forever enlightenment if I could finally kill all those chocolate cats, those chocolate birds, all those mountains that are the wrong flavor. You know, there's a term out in life, I guess everybody knows about, mixed metaphors. Who you thought taught them? Do you understand? It's exactly what they're saying, that vanilla, or whatever flavor they wanted, reality, things speaking for themselves. In the battle, in the alternative between chocolate and vanilla, let's assume that vanilla represents things speaking for themselves. And let's assume that chocolate is everyone's individual, just all the 15 billion, it's everyone's personal perception. And that everyone's personal perception, those who think in life, would say, my personal perception is in some way less than perfect, or else I would know everything. I at least know everything I want to know. And I do not. I am still curious, I'm a seeker for the truth, and etc. So the idea that things should speak for themselves, in this case, we'll say that vanilla would represent things speaking for themselves. There's some kind of cosmic, divine, inherent, essential message that everything has. All right, what's holding me back is my personal. I'm not any worse than anybody else. I'm just one of 15 billion cloudy thinkers, imprecise thinkers. So if I could do away with the interference of my thought, that is, my idea that here is vanilla, here is the mountain, here is love, here is life. If I could do away with that, then I would be to the point that the thing could speak for itself. In other words, it's my fault. It's everybody's fault. But in other words, it's my fault. I got a faulty receiver. But what you're saying is, vanilla would triumph if we can do away with chocolate. You know, I went that far for nothing. Well, you can't do it, but you understand if you could do it, that's a new height of impertinence. Doesn't even begin to cover that. I mean, if you just follow literally what I said, that if vanilla was the point, then the dream is to do away with chocolate, and that would produce all vanilla. Don't look for an insight. I'm just trying to make you see that what passes in the city for being reasonable, sequential, logical thought is why it must always be episodic and stop, because if you carry it just a little bit further, it's not that it becomes wrong. It becomes, what would be a technical term? Dumbass. That's why I said moot or impertinent doesn't really cover it. It's just like, what? Because your brain kind of going, what? But what I was suggesting was a different place, and it's not somewhere mystical, and it's not because of the faultiness of this mechanism, because that's not going to improve. Not where it is now. That's what we keep calling here the old building site, city level. You got to move somewhere else. The idea of like an invisible tower in the city, and you see that I'm talking about you, back at street level, you're up there looking down, you and everybody else, but look at you. Your perception of everything is no longer, has any qualitative impact whatsoever. It's just there. Your impression of everything else out there in the city, you look down, you see you turning around looking at a church, looking at a parade, looking at love, and you see that your receiver has certain impressions. And you see that down there, that receiver, your old intelligence, is thoughtful, insightful, tries to be metaphorical, and it realizes that its impression of the thing, the mountain, love,